Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Western Area Planning Subcommittee meeting for today. I'm Councillor David Jeffries, and I'm chairing today's meeting. To my right are the planning officers Sarah Lamming and Karen Aber, and Keith Thompson and Scott Richardson, Highways Officer. To my left, Jane Dale from Democratic Services, Diane Hayden, Solicitor. Also in the chamber are members of the committee and the public. Arrangements for dealing with planning applications. An officer's summary and update will be given. Items involving members of the public will be dealt with first, and speakers are restricted to 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Speakers are not permitted to circulate additional information, including photographs, plans, or petitions. Any councillor not on the committee who has requested to speak will also be given 3 minutes. Members are to note the information given by officers and speakers, any decision proposed which is contrary to the recommendation contained in the report, will require reasons if the proposal is to refuse, and reasons and conditions if the proposal is to approve the application. In accordance with the Councillors' Equality Policy, speakers are asked to refrain from making any comments which be construed as discriminatory or defamatory. Otherwise, it would be necessary to intervene. Additionally, I would request that also different views may be expressed, that people respect those differences. Please ensure mobile phones are switched to silent to avoid any disruption during the meeting. And also, whilst you are not speaking, can you put yourself on mute if you have not already done so? Fire procedure. If the fire alarm sounds, attendees will be directed where to go. Please follow instructions given by officers. Thank you. We'll now move on to the agenda. Agenda item number 1, declarations of pecuniary, non-pecuniary and prejudicial interests, and declarations under section 4 of the Planning Code of Practice for dealing with planning applications. Members to declare any interest in items on the agenda and the nature of such interests. Yes, Councillor Hopton.
I'd like to declare an interest on both items, but in different ways. So the first one, Westfield Farm, having spoken at the previous Western Area Planning Committee meeting against that, I'll excuse me. Obviously, everyone in the room has heard me speak about that, so I don't need to repeat myself. I'll excuse myself from that part of the meeting. And regarding the next one, the Amazon meeting, that is, again, that site is within my ward. I've attended many meetings where both as Amazon in the Amazon Liaison Committee and also within North Ferriby and Welton Parish Council, where it's been discussed extensively, different aspects about this site. However, particularly about this application, I've not expressed any opinion whatsoever. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that fact ahead of that part.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Carey.
Yes, the site visit this morning, I didn't attend it, but I did go later on in the morning to have a look at the infrastructure around it and the roads. So I just need to declare I've been there.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Bogle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just item 4, page 5. I attended the site visit this morning. Thank you.
Would that be the same for all the councillors that were there this morning, including myself? Site visit. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of this subcommittee held on the 10th of June 2025. I just do have one slight amendment on the last one. If Councillor Beauville, in the minutes that was presented, it says referred to trade in Ellerton Brough, and it was missed out where it said Anne Hessel. So that should have been added on as such. So where is a ward councillor? That's just to correct the minutes from the last meeting. So all those in favour, sorry, for approval of the correct record of minutes. All in favour? Right, thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, withdrawals. Are there any withdrawals at all?
No withdrawals, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to agenda item number 4. That's the application for Westfield Farm. If planning officer would like to come in on that one.
Yeah, so members will recall that this item was discussed at the last meeting where it was deferred for a site visit, which took place this morning. So this application is for conversion of a equestrian stables to a farm shop and cafe with covered seating area and outdoor seating area, associated flexible retail and office units, Class E, installation of solar panels, new access and associated works, including parking and soft landscaping at Westfield Farm in Swanland. Just got one update, Chair. Following discussions on site and discussing with the highway officer, we feel it's necessary to add a condition requiring the existing vehicular access to be closed for vehicles prior to the first use of the site to avoid conflict with pedestrian users. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you. Our first speaker we have on here is Mr. A. Hodgson. He is the applicant's agent. You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Hodgson, if you can, and then a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I'm going to use the 3 minutes just really to recap on some of the points raised at the last committee meeting by members, and hopefully just to make a few clarifications. So the first one is to do with the location of the site. One of the members mentioned their words were it's a great scheme but in the wrong location. I would completely disagree with that in planning terms. In the national planning guidance, when they're telling us to look for rural diversification types of scheme like this, which is encouraged for farm shops, they tell us to look first of all for the reuse of existing buildings. Well, that's the first one ticked off. We've got a good range of buildings there, but also to find a location which is well located and sustainable if we can. Now, most of the farm shops I deal with are in locations where you have to drive to. There's no options. This not only is this site well located to Swanland, it means that vast majority of the people will be able to walk and cycle to the site. That's not usually the case with any farm shops that we deal with. Normally, everyone has to drive there because it's in a rural location. So the site is actually now within the built framework of the village. So from a sustainability point of view, it doesn't get any better than that from a national planning policy guidance point of view or from a planning point of view. It's a highly sustainable location. In terms of the scale of the development, I think there was a bit of misunderstanding last time around. If the key thing in terms of scale is the tradable floor space, not the overall floor space. So in that respect, the farm shop itself is only 260 square meters. So if you think that a Tesco Express is around 250 square meters, that's the sort of size of farm shop we're talking about. I hope that helps you get into your mind. It's Tesco Express size, and it was being compared to out of sight garden centres. It's just not at that scale. Even with the offices added on, we're only at 348 square meters. So what that equates to really, this is important on the parking element of it, we've got 65, I think, parking spaces. I work for Lidl and Aldi. They tend to give one parking space per 50 square meters of floor space. This scheme's got a parking space for every 9 square meters of floor space. It's a big over provision for what you would normally see. If you go to a Tesco Express, you would normally get about 15 car parking spaces. We've got 65 in there. So it's really important to look at what the tradable floor space is in there and not just the gross floor space for how this scheme is going to actually work. Another point that was raised was about events. There's no intention of the client to run weddings or anything there. And as the officer quite rightly stated at the last meeting, that can be controlled by the hours of operation. So I just wanted to re-clarify that. And I suppose the key one is highways.
You have 30 seconds left.
Yeah, the key one's highways. There was no real major objections to the scheme, 6 objectors. If there was a major issue with highways, we'd have expected a lot more objections from local residents than purely just 6. The previous scheme on this site was is unrestricted use as a livery with lorries and cars going in there at any time they like. So effectively, that's why we went in with a pre-app and made sure that we signed off all of the highways and checked it all before we put the application in. And that's why we don't have any objections from the highways team. I don't think there's any really any grounds for refusing this on highways terms.
Okay, Mr. Hodgson, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Right, councillors, as we know, this morning, the members that were able to make the site visit, one of the main issues was the highways, which I'm sure some of the members who paid a visit will be more than happy to enlighten us all on. So I'll just leave this open to any councillor wishing to come in on this one. Yes, councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was very impressed on visiting the site. I must admit I had doubts, like many other members of this committee. It seems a wonderful use of this particular livery yard. You know, we're not actually proposing on this that there's any extension of buildings. It's basically the reuse of buildings that have been established there over some length of time. The plans look of a high quality. It looks a very useful facility, and I'm sure will be very popular. I think we were concerned about access, but it was very helpful to have the highways officer there to point out traffic flows and the like, and also access by pedestrians. I think the only thing that I was concerned with was the fact that the current entrance is still used for farm access, and it was a case of I was concerned that when people are visiting it as a new facility, they would automatically turn into what is the current entrance, and would that generate a backup of traffic on that particular road? But other than that, I think it's a great form of diversification for the farmers there, and reinstating those buildings to good use. But I'm happy to listen to other comments before we form a decision on that.
Thank you, councillor Needham. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't realise I was next in the queue. I was just signalling to join it. But whilst I've got the microphone, I may as well get a roll on. So just I've written 8 or 9 comments here, Chair. So the agent speaking just then, and Mr. Hodgson just said that this is an accessible location, which is entirely right. And in planning policy terms, that is beneficial from the applicant's perspective. But it still doesn't change the fact that this is alien. This is unique to other farm shops, as we discussed at the meeting last month, in the sense that, as Mr. Hodgson pointed out, all other farm shops are accessible by car only because they're in the countryside, because the farm shops at farms in the countryside. So to suggest that this is different to those but the same, that's a cake and eating it situation. That's a circle we're going to have to square as a committee this afternoon. The next issue I wanted to point out was that parking, there's 68 spaces there, but there's 6 business premises. So if there's 2 members of staff at each, minimum, that's 12. So there's between a 5th and a 6th of them gone if they've got customers as well. And I don't imagine many supermarkets put on 100 covers for people eating, and the turnover of spaces will be a lot quicker at a supermarket. So there's a bit of apples and oranges there as well to compare not like with not like. For me though, the noise is the biggest issue, the impact. Now, we were reassured by planning officers this morning that the hours are 8 till 6 Monday to Saturday and 9 till 4 on a Sunday, and that even should there be a licensing application, that wouldn't actually overrule the planning condition hours. So I think the first thing to say is that residents shouldn't be worried about evening activity. That's not permitted currently, and it would require going through the whole planning process, if I remember rightly from our conversation this morning. So there is no threats in what we're looking at here today of evening activities beyond 6 Monday to Saturday and 4 on a Sunday. So really, I suppose, Chairman, the questions we have to ask ourselves is, if not this, what? It's an infill application. It's surrounded by houses. I mean, I remember 20, 30 years ago when a friend grew up on Westfield Lane, that there was a farm there was a goat tied to the fence post. It was all fields. It's not the case anymore. So we are not looking at a rural countryside site. It's an infill plot. So would we be looking at houses? Would we be looking at other business uses? If not this, what, basically? It's also worth noting that Mrs. Abbott spoke to us earlier about the building being what we describe as a non-designated heritage asset. The actual building we're looking at here is lovely. You don't make barns like that anymore. All brick, slate roof, very nice to have, very nice to see. So anything to preserve that has its merits and benefits as well. So really, I suppose the question is, how many houses could be fit on that site? What other uses could we see? And as a committee, do we think that the noise impact from the shop, from the customers, from any events that are held, are detrimental to a point they should be refused? or perhaps better than potential other uses could be, and that this could be seen as a blessing rather than a curse. I don't have the answers to those questions, but I thought I'd raise them all now so we could discuss them.
Yes, Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, and there's a lot of work that's gone into this not only by the applicant, but also by the officers as well. This has already been to our committee. We've already thrashed this out. We've now had a site visit with a highways officer. That's basically any objections there might have been on those grounds have been put to bed. So I don't see any problem with this. I think it's a very, very attractive development. I would certainly like to go there myself, and I'm certainly very happy to propose approval of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Yes, Councillor Carey. Mr. McSorris, Councillor Bogle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I found the site visit this morning very useful. The original application, when we discussed it, it was very attractive. Maintaining, as Richard called it, a non-designated heritage asset and putting it to better use is something which is highly commendable. My only issue last time was regarding access. It's very useful having the highways officer there this morning to give his point of view, and I'm quite happy to second proposal to accept this. Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, since we've got a proposal and a second on the table now, I wanted to save this so it didn't get lost in my ramble, as is often the case. Is there any thoughts from any of committee members about potential for noise impact from, for example, amplified music? There will, of course, be the potential for some sort of events, albeit, as I've already alluded to, daytime ones. And if this were to be approved today, does the committee think it would be sensible to see some sort of condition to limit music impacting the neighbours that are, I'd say, probably 50, 60 yards away to the east?
Well, we could ask the officers, would they have to apply for an events licence should they wish to do this, please, Karen?
Through you, Chair. Yes, they would have to apply for an events licence, but that wouldn't necessarily control any amplified music. That would be up to the public protection team to determine whether music was acceptable. But if members felt necessary, we could put a condition on to limit amplified music. But as officers, we don't feel it's necessary because of the limited opening hours, and because you could have people play music in the gardens, which are quite close to the site anyway, and there's obviously residential development that's just been built that also could play music in the gardens, and there's no restrictions on that. So I think because the opening times are quite limited, that it'd be acceptable as it is. But whatever members feel is necessary.
Does that count? Satisfy you, Councillor?
I've got two more things, Mr. Chairman. I'm never one for brevity. But while we're on the subject of noise and music, as Karen's rightly said, people can play music in the gardens, but they wouldn't be doing so on a 24/7, 365 basis. I mean, I like to party as much as the next man, but I don't have music in my garden every single day of the week, every single week of the year. So I suppose there's an element of balance to be struck here between a commercial venue playing music to entertain its guests all the time and someone occasionally having a barbecue. Again, up to the committee what they think. I have 1 vote out of 10 or something. So,
yes, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Obviously, with regard to the timings, they can only trade up until 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 4 p.m, which is a condition of this planning. Interesting point. Whilst we were on the site visit, we were subject to a great deal of noise externally, and one of the neighbours was having their hedge trimmed, and there was also a road sweeper, and that noise, and we could barely hear the officer speaking at that particular time. So bearing in mind that most of the activity would be within a farm shop or within the enclosed aspect of the cafe, I think there's greater noise outside than there would be inside.
Yes, Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. Fair enough. As I said, I bring these things up for debate and well debated, Councillor Needham. So my next two were both highways related issues. Now, we've already talked about parking, about impact, about length of stay, for example. I suppose a condition to require double yellows to be put along the western side of sites close there would resolve all those issues quite nicely and protect people driving in and out on a bend, as well as ensure visibility, which was something that the applicant Officers Highways were keen to say. The new position of the entrance is in the best possible position for visibility. Well, that visibility counts for naught if there's cars parked in the way obstructing the view. So with that in mind, my first point would be that if it could be conditioned that double yellows go on there, again, at first glance, that seems sensible to me. And then the second point is that we do appear to have a second bite of the cherry and crack of the whip on this, in that the application for housing to the north was required to extend and modify Westfield Lane's entrance. And I think somebody went down there with a shovel and did half a morning's work, and that was considered good enough. And I don't know about anybody here who attended the site visit, but when I pulled out of there, my heart was not where it should be. It was a bit further north, pulling into traffic on West End. And so conditioning something to say that West End needs to be extended or expanded as well possibly couldn't hurt.
Is that something we can bring up with the highways? Yes, sorry.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Meredith. In terms of the double yellow lines, generally that's good for oncoming traffic, which is right traffic on your right hand side, but the visibility along there, because you are 2 metres back of the footpath, you can usually see either side of the car. We do have this issue at most junctions, and generally most people are quite courteous and they shouldn't park within 15 metres of the access.
Sorry, I'm not laughing. I have a saying that common courtesy is no longer common, but I'm glad to know one of us still believes in the kindness of others.
And I don't believe it's needed, but again, if members feel like it's necessary, then it is something we'll put on, but it would have to be through a section 106 because we'd need financial contributions towards the making of the TRO, which in this case is going to be in excess of £4,000. So.
Sorry, can I just come in? Obviously, we have discussed the suitability of the access and the visibility internally, and we have no technical objections from the highways officer. And there's been no suggestion that double yellow lines are, necessary. So, from an officer perspective, we don't really consider it reasonable, necessary, or proportionate to this type of development because the visibility is acceptable on both sides.
Well, I was about to ask then, what would the commuted sums from an application like this be, and would there be enough in there for the 4 to 6 grand for a TRO and lines? But it sounds like it's quite conclusively not needed anyway, so that question might now be moved. But again, open to members to consider before going to the vote. And then the last one was just the Westfield Lane entrance and the rather constricted nature and very poor visibility displays.
Is this the junction outside of the access?
I know this is the T junction down at West End at the main road going through Swanland.
That there's no real issues with that at the moment. There's no technical technical details to suggest that. In terms of the in terms of the accidents, there's no known accidents to be there. There's one slight accident in the last 5 years. So I don't believe that's something that needs to be considered at this application.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your patience and indulgence. I've covered everything on my list.
Thank you very much, Councillor Meredith. Sorry. Councillor Robson first, then Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was just about to say what had already been said. So regarding the double yellow lines and stuff like that, I think that Councillor Meredith's debate with himself is finished now, so we can go to the vote.
Yeah. Councillor Bowville, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think Councillor Meredith's made a good point about double yellow lines. Whereas I don't think they're probably needed at this stage. I can imagine that this facility could become very popular, and you could well lead to people parking on the lane. But at the moment, I don't think we need to have a condition for that. But I think it's something that may be needed in the future. Thank you.
Right, thank you, everybody. Yeah, this morning's sites visit certainly cleared up a lot of issues And I say many of the points being brought up have been perfectly valid ones, but thankfully they've been answered successfully. So we have a proposal from Councillor Robson for approval to office recommendations, seconded by Councillor Beauville. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That planning application has been approved, subject to planning officer's conditions. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on to agenda item number 5, the Amazon UK services. If you come in, please, Sal.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the display of an internally illuminated freestanding tertum sign to the main entrance and 3 internally illuminated fascia signs to the north and west elevations and 1 non-illuminated fascia sign to the south elevation of the building. And it's for the Amazon UK Services Limited site on Brickyard Lane in Melton.
Thank you. We have one speaker today on this one. It's Mrs. B. Hookham. You have 3 minutes, Mrs. Hookham, with the 30-second warning. If you can just press the main button in the front there for the speaker.
I'm here as a resident of North Ferriby to object to the proposed illumination of the large Amazon logo high up on the northern side of the warehouse, and would start by asking the simple question, why is there a need to add further to the glow and subsequent light pollution in the night sky adjacent to the village of North Ferriby? The warehouse is not open to the public, and due to its size does not need to advertise its presence by way of a large illumined sign on the northern face, which will be highly visible to residents of Melton Fields and the North Ferriby properties situated in an elevated position on Swanland Hill. The fact that such extra illumination can have a negative effect has already been recognised by the agreement not to illuminate the Amazon logos on either the southern or eastern faces to prevent interference with the bird population or nighttime disturbance to residents. So the environmental control comments that this particular additional lighting should not impact on residential amenity seems to be at odds with the reasoning behind the much welcome decision with regard to the other 2 logos, and in my opinion is therefore more of a hope than a reality. In conclusion, I note that the Council's recommendation to approve, apart from disregarding local objections, states that the level of illumination proposed is in line with the recommendations in the Institute of Lighting Professionals Guide for an urban area. However, if you look up the definition of urban, it states, in relating to or characteristic of a town or city. North Ferriby is decidedly neither of these things. As already mentioned, it is simply a village. It has a population of around 3,500 residents, less than half of that the government suggests is needed before being considered a town, never mind a city. However, if you should still be minded to permit this additional illumination to the night sky to go ahead, then I would respectfully ask that the lux level be brought down to that recommended for a rural setting.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hookham. Thank you. Right, put this out to councillors for any comments. Anybody any things they wish to make on this one? Yes, Councillor Needham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's quite obvious what this building is due to the sheer size of the space that is taken up by it. And yeah, I'm sort of a bit gassed really as to why you would need a 15-metre sign to illuminate this particular warehouse that we all know what it is. And with regard to training, I'm sure anybody who is visiting the site as a supplier or delivery vehicle, they would have sat-nav and wouldn't need such huge garrus signs on the warehouse. So I fully sympathise with any residents that will see this from a distance. Unfortunately, because it's something that I don't particularly like or other people don't particularly like, I'm not sure that I'm eligible to put forward an idea with regard to refusal on the grounds of using planning law there. But I think the speaker there put that very concisely, that really the lux should be dimmed because it just seems unnecessary. I notice in one of the quotes from the parish councillors that said there's no demonstrable need for illumination, particularly at night. The building is clearly identifiable without additional lighting and would contribute unnecessarily to light pollution in the village. Well, I think that probably sums it up. So I'm open to debate.
Councillor Hopton.
Excellent. Thank you there, Councillor Needham. You sort of summarised that quite well. Can I just clarify? Dale just mentioned there 15. It's 5 metres tall, isn't it? The sign. Is that right? Or is it 15? 15 wide, right? Okay, yeah, it was the height that was. Yeah, sorry, that's fine. Yeah, I'll just say, Councillor Needham has explained and articulated that well. Obviously, this does fall within Welton Parish, and they have also, like the speaker there, objected and talked about the need for illumination. Obviously, the only need for illumination is technically at night, because when it's dark, but does it need to be illuminated all night, for example? Does it need to be illuminated at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning? Those types of things. So, it's that additional light pollution. We've already sort of dimmed the lights, or taken the lights off on the southern side, which is, again, is fine. I understand the desire for signage from Amazon. It's next to the train lines and next to the A63, so you can see why they want to put large signs on, so that people do exactly know that it is Amazon and not another large retail organisation. But yeah, just that need for illumination, particularly all night. Again, the dimming of the lights, and whilst we've done it for the wildlife on the southern side, does that mean that the wildlife are more important than the people? So it's mentioned there. I've already said it's in Welton Parish. The nearest properties are actually literally across the road. Quite a well-established sort of area of originally social housing built, I think, for the old Kappa Pass site there on Brickyard Lane and Melton Fields. So they are within quite close proximity. So potentially we were having that light coming into their bedroom windows of an evening. So again, that needs to be, has that been fully considered on there? That'll do for now, but I may want to come back.
Just before we go on, councillors, Sarah just wants to come in on some more detail. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add a couple of little updates to the report. So in terms of the note to applicant, we'd just like to shorten that because we'd just like to clarify that the lighting levels on this scheme should comply with the lighting levels for the overall site, and we think that can be dealt with by a note to the applicant. And then also that the Nature Conservation Officer has confirmed that following the removal of the illumination from the southern sign, that a screening assessment has been undertaken and an appropriate assessment is not required because there's no increase in lighting levels that affect the green space to the south of the site, adjacent to the Humber or to the east of the site. Thank you.
Was it Councillor Robson? You had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is probably a done deal, like so many things that we see nowadays. This is quite a big organisation, apparently. There are three things that apparently you can see on the Earth from space. One is the Grand Canyon in America, one's the Great Wall of China, and the other one is the Amazon warehouse in Brickyard Lane. I really, for the life of me, cannot see the need for them to further draw attention to themselves. I mean, to me, this is pure vanity at the expense of the local people. What can I say? What can we do about it? Watch this space. I'm not going to say anything more.
Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd better weigh in because I've not spoken much today. So for me, I actually do agree with one of the comments from Mrs. Hookham earlier about the urban classification. It seems to me to be contradictory. So because it's an industrial area, it counts as urban. But they've already acknowledged that they shouldn't be lighting the south side of the building because it could affect the wildlife in a rural setting. So again, the moral of today's meeting, Chairman, is that I'm easily confused normally, but doubly so today. It just doesn't seem to make sense. It's contradictory details. Another important point here is that it's been acknowledged that the wildlife in the area needs to be protected, and rightly so. The area is in consideration for a UNESCO World Heritage Site for the migrating birds. But that same protection isn't being afforded to the people in the area, to the north and to the west with the lighting. It is worth noting, to be fair, that it's not going to be the brightest light in the industrial area. There are other businesses with brighter light. This is halo lighting, so it's backlit, but it will be the biggest light. And yes, there's been some appeasement in the sense that the eastern side of the building won't be lit up, but light moves. It's not just in one place. You can see it from afar. And again, as described by Mrs. Hookham earlier, it's become a very bright area. I mean, in the comments in our report, somebody's actually said it feels like daytime at nighttime because of the overall ambient lighting in the area. And so we have an opportunity here to at least see it limited, at least see a bit of balance struck. And so I'll put a proposal on the table, Chairman. I'd suggest that we defer this so officers can go back to speak with the applicants to see if it can be agreed that the signs go up without lighting. We have no ability to insist upon that, and having checked with officers earlier, I found out that we can't even condition this application and approve it with conditions for no lighting, because part of the terminology of the application as submitted is display of internally illuminated freestanding totem and internally illuminated fascia signs. So we can't amend the application as submitted because that's not within the gift of this committee. So ultimately, all we can really do is ask that they go away and consider not putting lights in. And I think that's really in line with the comments from Councillors Needham, Robson, and of course Hopton, who well should know this better than anybody. He's at Amazon liaison meetings every month, as he mentioned in his declarations at the beginning. And just with a view to supporting the residents' chair, I think defer to back to officers to have conversations to try and find a more appropriate and considerate balance would be the best way forward.
Thank you. Diane wants to come in on this, on the legal side.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, when we take enforcement action against advertisements, the legal criteria is the basis of highway safety and amenity. And that's the amenity of the area, not the amenity necessarily of individual residents, but it can be. Now, clearly, just listening to the discussion just now, for example, if vehicles were coming to the site during the night, as I'm sure that they probably will be because it's going to be a huge operation, there's a safety issue there, potentially, if the advert isn't illuminated for the drivers bringing stuff onto the site. And if I was in reverse going to issue a notice against an advertisement, I can only consider highway safety and amenity for doing that. So I'll just ask you to think around that before you make your decision.
Yes, Councillor Hopton.
Yeah, just coming back on that slightly there, from the legal aspect, obviously, I think I don't think there's any real objection to the totem sign that's on the entrance to the site. So that would be pretty obvious to most drivers, as would the sat nav and everything else. I mean, to be honest, if they need the sign that big to know where they're going to deliver, maybe they need a new job. Actually, I encountered an Amazon delivery driver at the wrong side of a Brickyard lane when down there last week, who'd somehow managed to miss the great big Amazon building that was there. But there we are. I digress slightly. I would like to second what Councillor Meredith has proposed on that. And I actually just would like to clarify something that Councillor Robson just said there about a done deal. Obviously, I personally, as a councillor, take exception to that. I don't think anything's a done deal, particularly something that's coming into committee. So I'm not quite sure, particularly with the decision that's been on the previous application, what that actually means, because obviously it's down to us as councillors to make that. So it certainly isn't a done deal in my eyes.
Sorry, come again, Sarah. Someone up, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Can I just come in on a few points that have been raised by the objector and some of the councillors, that first of all, we need to kind of look at where the harm is, and we've got to remember that this is an allocated industrial site. That it's already a large building, so that the size of the adverts are, you know, proportionate to the building. It's close to an existing road network which is already lit. The nearest neighbours are to the northwest, and they're over 250 metres away. And there is tree planting adjacent to those properties that will provide some screening to the signs. And there are other illuminated signs on the Melton industrial estate with a higher level of illumination than these particular signs. And finally, the signs are halo signs, so that the lighting comes from behind the sign and the actual letters aren't illuminated at all. So the light is just shining from behind the sign, similar to that shown on the images above us. Thank you.
Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. With regard from Councillor Hopton about what I said about it being, in my mind, a done deal, we shall see, won't we? Thank you.
Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. It wouldn't be a planning committee meeting without me saying something and legal having to jump in a panicked fashion. I think that's 6 in a row for me. But no, I think it's important to note we're not suggesting refusing this application at all, and not refusing it based on harm either. What I'm suggesting, what I'm asking for, is that officers engage with the applicant and try to find what would overall, in my opinion, be a better balanced solution. Amazon have no obligation to agree to that. They can say, no, we disagree. Thank you for the chat. Send it back for a decision as proposed. Or they can say, we completely understand the points that were raised. We can see why neighbours in North Ferriby would be upset. We can see how, for example, extra lighting isn't going to be popular. We can see how a company that wants to have eco credentials touted at the front and fore probably shouldn't be using extra electricity to light a sign in a well-lit car park. We can see how there's no health and safety issues because it'll be signed at the road, because the car park will be signed, because the building will be signed, and so there should not be any safety dangers, and that effectively this extra lighting is just an extra nuisance to residents. And we're just simply saying, can you have a chat, please, and consider not lighting the big signs on the side of the building. If they say yes, we can make a decision based on that. If they say no, we have to make the decision we're looking at now. But we're not actually refusing anything, so there's no measure of harm that needs to be applied. We're just asking for civilised people to have a civilised discussion and to defer this to go back to officers for a chat and a natter. That's what I've put on the table, and I can't see a reason why that isn't at least a sensible way forward. Otherwise, we're deciding something without knowing if we could maybe do it better.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we just clarify the exact reason why we would be going back to them for no lighting then? Is it impact on residential amenity, or?
It would be to minimise the impact on residential amenity. And let's be honest, the eco element of it and running great big lights on the side of a building doesn't exactly scream we are an eco-friendly company. As you drive out in your electric van underneath this sign that's lit, that's a waste of electricity, there's again a bit of a juxtaposition there. But no, it would be minimising the level of impact on residential amenity. And actually, I'd suggest wildlife too, because you can still see lights. If I shine a torch that way, you can still see it over there. So even though there's no lighting on the south side where the birds nest, it doesn't mean there's no extra lighting where the birds are nesting. So there's two elements there, really.
Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that from Councillor Meredith, who seems to be on a roll.
Right. If this is deferred back to the officers, and this actually, an Amazon turn around and say, no, we're happy with it, is it to come back here to have the same discussion? Should we not give the officers the right to accept that or not? That's just a question put out by.
If I may, Chair, as the proposer, and Councillor Coltish has just said it best. In fact, I think we should send him as the resident poker player. If we have on the table that agree with us or will say yes, we've basically tied officers' hands behind their back in any negotiation. So whilst your suggestion is prudent and sensible, it's probably not helpful in getting the outcome that I'm after.
Yes, I think so. So you want us to go back to the applicant to discuss the impact on residential amenity and wildlife by removing the illumination from the signs, and you want it to come back to committee in either event.
For me, Chair, thank you. So it's display of an internally illuminated freestanding totem, and as Diane's just pointed out, that's to attract drivers there. It's below most tree level, below most fence level. I can't really see an issue with that. It's unfortunate. There's no real need for it, but again, it's not a hill I'm wishing to die on. But the big ones that are 2-3 stories up in the air on the side of the building will be significantly, exponentially more impactful. And so they're the ones that I'd like to see this application deferred so that officers can discuss them not being lit. And then again, I think we've found the best possible balance at an industrial site that's been allocated for such purposes for 2 decades.
So could I just check then, there's a sign over the doorway, which is kind of the Amazon smiley tick sign, which is at a lower level again. It's not high up in the corners of the building. Are you concerned about those? Do you want me to ask about that as well?
I'd suggest anything on the building doesn't need to be lit. The car park's full of lights. The building's covered in lights. The one at the door, as Dan's already rightly points out, needs to attract drivers in, although Councillor Hopton's point that if you can't find a job and you're a delivery driver, perhaps you shouldn't be operating heavy machinery is also valid. But anything on the building, to me, doesn't need to be lit. They might want it to be lit, but it doesn't need to be lit. So I don't see any harm in asking them to reconsider.
Right, just one quick question. I'm just reading about the illumination. The maximum of the illuminations is 250 CD/M squared.
Yeah, so the measure of illumination for signage is dealt with in candelas, which is different to the illumination measurement for how you say measure floodlighting on a pitch or something like that. That's dealt with in lumens. So candelas are a more direct intensity of lighting, and that's just how we measure the source of light for an advertisement.
Any other councillors wishing to speak at all? Right. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Meredith, seconded by Councillor Hopton, to defer this back to officers to approach Amazon again to see whether it can be that this signage is put up without any illuminations. Is that correct? Everybody happy with that?
Is it coming back?
And it will come back to Western Area Planning for further consideration. Right. All those in favour of the proposal? That was all in favour, so thank you very much indeed. So that one has been deferred back to the officers. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We'll now move on to appeals. There you go, Keith. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, item 6A is an appeal that was dismissed at a site on Pasture Road in Goal. So a commercial property that had a canopy and grey steel supports. We recommended refusal based on impact on the street scene, and you can see there the street scene doesn't have any sort of canopy, steel supports, and a little kind of roof in its vicinity, and the inspector agreed with us on that and dismissed the appeal. Item 6B, slightly more interesting. This was applied for a second essential workers dwelling at a farm just to the east of Wetwang. So there's currently a broiler business that already has an essential workers dwelling. The units on the site are currently operated sort of split, and the appellant was trying to make the case that the business needed a second essential workers dwelling. We didn't agree and said that there was no functional need for a second workers dwelling. it subsequently went to a hearing. So the case officer and a representative from Valuation and Estates upheld our conclusion to say that there still wasn't a functional need, despite what they said around the table at the hearing. You'll see in the sort of assessment that one of the main points was the availability of properties in the vicinity of this farming business. And as you know, Wetwang has a site just to the southern edge of the village. I think 70 or 80 houses that are being constructed. Quite a few of those are 1 and 2 beds that could be made available for a worker at the site. So it failed on not being functionally, it's not been established that there's a functional need at the farm for a second dwelling. So a good result. And the last appeal, 6C. If you want.
Yeah, this is an application this appeal was for the retention of a glass balustrade and screening to an existing roof of a residential property in Hawthorne Avenue in Willoughby. The appeal was dismissed following officers recommending refusal on the grounds that the balustrade was out of character with the existing property, and also the use of the terrace, the roof, the flat roof as a sitting out area would have a detrimental impact on the living conditions of the occupiers. So that was another good result there.
And that concludes appeals. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Much obliged. Thank you very much. Thank you.